You were standing outside a hotel valet stand on a Friday night. A matte black Lamborghini pulls up first, engine cracking like thunder against the glass. The valet straightens his jacket. 3 strangers pull out their phones. A guy steps out in a designer jacket, chin up, already performing for an audience he hasn't even looked at yet. Behind him, a faded silver Camry rolls in. Nobody looks twice. A man in a plain button-down hands the valet a $5 and walks inside. Here's what you don't know yet, standing there guessing which one is rich. The man in the Lamborghini is $210,000 in debt across 4 credit lines and a lease he can barely cover most months. The man in the Camry has $4. $2 million sitting quietly across 2 brokerage accounts and a paid-off house 11 minutes away. You'd assume you know which one is rich. You'd be wrong far more often than you think. And the reason you'd be wrong is the entire reason this story matters. Level 1. The trap that looks like success 10 years ago, you were the guy in the Lamborghini. Maybe your version was a BMW on a 72-month term. The shape of the trap was identical. You just crossed into real income for the first time. Not rich, not yet, but comfortable enough that the math finally worked on paper. $85,000 a year. Enough to qualify. And qualifying felt like arriving. You remember the finance office, the salesman, a guy named Devin, sliding the paperwork across the desk like it was a formality instead of a life-altering decision. $58,000 financed at 7.2% over 6 years, $10.20 a month before insurance. He didn't mention the insurance. Nobody ever mentions the insurance at that desk. Your hand was actually shaking a little when you signed. Not from fear. From excitement. You didn't recognize it as the same feeling. You drove it off the lot and felt the exact sensation society trains you to crave. The leather seats adjusted themselves. The doors closed with that heavy, expensive thud. A coworker named Priyanka asked if you'd gotten a promotion. You hadn't. You'd gotten a debt obligation, and it felt better than the truth, so you let the lie stand. The truth was your savings account had $1,400 in it. Your 401k was sitting at the bare 3% default your HR portal set for you on day 1, the box you never came back to check. Here's the part nobody warns you about at that desk. A car isn't an asset. It's the fastest depreciating major purchase a human being can make. The second those tires clear the curb, you lose 20% of your money. Within 5 years, you lose up to 65%. Your $58,000 BMW, the one that made Priyanka ask about your promotion, would be worth barely $22,000 by year 5. Meanwhile, after interest, taxes, and premium insurance, you'd have poured closer to $70,000 in cash into a metal box quietly melting away on your driveway every single night. Nobody does that math at the finance desk. The desk isn't built for math. It's built for the monthly payment, a number engineered to feel just small enough to be survivable, completely disconnected from the wealth destruction happening right beneath it. Level 2. The year everything got quiet, the shift didn't happen because of a catastrophic breakdown. It happened because of a woman named Rin, and a spreadsheet, and one uncomfortable dinner. You met her about a year into the BMW loan. She was a hospital administrator, sharp, a little blunt. The kind of person who noticed when you flinched at a restaurant bill and asked why instead of letting it go. She wasn't rich. She drove a 2014 Corolla with 140,000 miles and a check engine light she ignored because her mechanic confirmed it was just a faulty sensor. But every Sunday night, without fail, she updated a personal net worth tracker the way some people keep a journal. 6 months in, over takeout containers on her kitchen counter, she turned her laptop toward you. "I want to show you something," she said. "Not to make a point. I'm just proud of it." Her investment column, 5 years into contributing 15% of every paycheck, had quietly crossed $61,000. Your column was the exact inverse. Your BMW showed $22,000 in value against $31,000 still owed. You were underwater on a depreciating piece of metal. Your retirement account, 5 years in, held $9,200. You laughed it off at the table. You didn't laugh it off in the car home. Something in your chest sat wrong the whole drive. The specific kind of wrong that comes from being shown a mirror you didn't ask for. She wasn't better at making money than you. She made less. But at 24, she understood something you were only beginning to grasp at 31. The car was never an asset. The car was an exit ramp where wealth bled out before it ever had the chance to compound. 9 weeks later, you made a decision that felt like a punch to the gut. You sold the BMW to a used car dealer for $19,000 against the $31,000 you owed. A $12,000 hole and no clean way to fill it. You wiped out what little savings you had left. You borrowed against your next 2 paychecks just to close the gap, which meant 2 months of eating rice and eggs and telling yourself it was temporary. It was the closest you'd come to real financial panic in your adult life, lying awake doing math on your phone at 1 a.m., wondering if you'd just made things worse instead of better. Driving away from that lot in an Uber felt like failure. In hindsight, it was the smartest financial decision you ever made. 4 months later, once you'd clawed back some cash, you bought a 2016 Honda Accord for $14,000. Cash, no loan, no interest, no monthly payment tied to an object losing value while parked in the rain. Then you did the part that actually mattered. You took that same $1,020 a month, the exact figure that used to vanish into the BMW loan, and set up an automatic transfer into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. The same boring fund Ren had been quietly feeding for years. Picture it like 2 identical buckets sitting side by side. One bucket has a hole in the bottom that's the car payment, draining every month into nothing. The other bucket has no hole. That $1,020 a month with no hole in the bucket becomes $190,000 in 10 years. Give it 20 years, and it crosses $600,000. Give it 30, and it passes $1.5 million. That same $1,020 spent on car loans and premium insurance over 30 years buys you nothing but a rotating series of rusted scrap metal worth a fraction of what you paid for it. One bucket fills up while you sleep. The other one never stops leaking. This part of financial independence is boring. It is genuinely boring. Nobody films the quiet Tuesday afternoon an index fund ticks up 0.5%. But that boring, invisible mechanism is the exact engine by which silent people become millionaires, while loud people stay trapped in a cycle of high income and zero net worth. Level 3. The hidden tax of visible wealth. By your 3rd year in the Accord, the shift in your finances was undeniable, even if the world around you hadn't caught up. An old coworker named Marcus reached out for lunch. You'd worked alongside him during the BMW era. He was still in the exact same loop, only 3 cars deeper now, a leased Tesla, then an Audi RS. Now actively shopping for a Porsche because, as he put it over drinks, I've earned it. You almost said something. You didn't. You just listened. He spent the first 15 minutes complaining before the food even arrived. His insurance renewal had landed at $4,200 a year for the Audi alone, nearly triple what you paid for the Accord with identical liability coverage. Because insurers price a car by replacement cost and theft risk, not by how good it feels at a red light. A tire replacement had run him $1,800. He had one mechanic 2 towns over who was the only person authorized to reset his computer modules. 2 strangers had dinged his doors in grocery store parking lots in the same month, and he still brought it up like a fresh wound. Marcus was paying what you'd started calling, quietly, in your own head, the ego tax. It isn't a line on a tax form. It's the ongoing premium you pay in real dollars and real stress to maintain an image for people who aren't paying attention and wouldn't care even if they were. He checked his phone twice during lunch, waiting on the dealership's service department about a sensor glitch that was going to cost $1,100 just to diagnose. He didn't use the word trapped. He didn't have to. It sat there at the table with both of you. Now, to be fair to Marcus, he'd argue the car was a reward, something he worked hard for and deserved to enjoy. And there's a version of that argument that's not wrong. Money that's actually free to spend, spent on something that brings you joy, isn't a mistake. The problem wasn't that Marcus liked nice cars. The problem was the math underneath it. He wasn't paying cash for a reward he'd already earned. He was financing a feeling he hadn't earned yet. And the interest on that feeling was compounding against him every single month. When the check came, you paid your half with a card linked to an account that had just crossed 6 figures. Marcus never asked about your finances. He saw the generic Honda and assumed you were the one struggling to keep up. You let him think whatever he needed to think. That was the freedom of having nothing to prove. Level 4. The anonymity advantage. By year 7. Your net worth crossed $1 million. There was no champagne. No announcement. You found out on a quiet Sunday evening updating the same spreadsheet Ren had shown you years earlier, the one you now kept together, because she was your wife now, and the ledger had become a shared habit instead of a wake-up call. You were still driving the Accord, It had 140,000 miles on it, the exact mileage on Ren's old Corolla the night she first turned that laptop toward you. You could have walked onto any luxury lot in the city and paid cash for a Mercedes without denting your net worth in the slightest. But the urge to perform had genuinely dissolved. You noticed it the way you notice a headache that's finally gone, mostly by its absence. Thomas Stanley spent decades surveying self-made millionaires across America, and one number from his research stuck with you specifically. Roughly 4 in 5 of them had never bought a new car in their life. The most common vehicles owned by people worth over $2 million weren't Mercedes or BMWs. They were used Fords, Toyotas, and Hondas. Not because rich people are cheap. Because every dollar tied up in a depreciating asset is a dollar that can't be deployed into cash-flowing real estate, equities, or a business. They'd simply done the math you'd done in that BMW finance office. Years too late to save you the first $70,000, but early enough to save you the next 10 years. When you drive an invisible car, an entire layer of friction disappears from your life. No valet expects an absurd tip. No mechanic assumes you have money to burn and pads the estimate. No relative sees your vehicle and quietly decides you owe them a loan. Around this time, you ran into Priyanka again, the coworker who'd asked about your promotion a decade earlier. You spotted her in a parking lot, stepping out of a brand new luxury SUV with temporary tags still taped in the window. She mentioned, with a sigh, how stressful work had gotten, how she couldn't afford to take a pay cut because the family's expenses had gotten so high. You recognized the trap immediately. Her new SUV wasn't a reward, it was a set of shiny handcuffs, locking her into a job she resented just to cover the payment. When she asked how you were doing, you mentioned you were thinking about taking 3 months off to travel and consult independently. She looked at your 140,000-mile Accord, then back at you, visibly doing math that wasn't adding up in her head. You didn't explain the spreadsheet. You didn't mention the index funds. You just smiled, wished her well, and drove away. Level 5. The freedom of 8 figures 10 years after you signed away $1,020 a month for a BMW you couldn't afford. Your financial life entered a phase that would have felt unreal to the version of you standing in that finance office. The growth stopped being linear. In year 8, your portfolio gained more in market growth alone than your entire salary that year. By year 10, stacked on top of paid-off real estate and a decade of uninterrupted contributions, your balance sheet quietly crossed $10 million. There was one moment, right around year 9, where you almost broke the streak. You were at a dealership with Ren, just looking, telling yourselves it was harmless, and there was a black Range Rover on the floor that pulled at something old in you. Your hand actually rested on the door handle for a second. Ren didn't say anything. She just looked at you, and you both started laughing, because you knew exactly what that 10 seconds was. Old habits don't disappear. You just get better at recognizing them before they cost you $70,000. You didn't hit 8 figures because of a lucky trade or a lottery ticket. You hit it because of 100 unsexy, boring decisions stacked on top of each other for a decade, keeping the Accord when your peers upgraded to Audis, never wavering on the 15% rule regardless of what the news said that week, living below your means so the money in the background could keep compounding without interruption. The Accord was finally retired at 190,000 miles. You didn't trade it for a supercar. You sold it to a college kid down the street for a couple $1,000s. Made sure the brakes and tires were fresh, and let it carry someone else through their degree the way it had carried you into your first million. You replaced it with a clean, fully optioned Toyota Highlander, paid in cash. Unremarkable, practical, the kind of car that disappears into any parking lot in North America. Now, when you're sitting in traffic and a kid in a leased sports car revs his engine next to you, checking his mirrors, waiting for someone on the sidewalk to notice him, you don't feel superior. You feel a strange, specific kind of empathy, because you know exactly what's sitting in his chest. You know the dread he feels on the first of the month when that payment clears. You know he's spending his youth buying the attention of strangers who'll forget he existed 5 seconds after he drives past. The ultimate realization: wealth was never the car. It was never the badge on the grill, or the sound of the engine, or the shift in tone from a coworker in a hallway. Real wealth is sovereignty, the ability to wake up on a Tuesday and decide entirely for yourself how you'll spend your time. It's knowing a medical emergency or a layoff or a market crash can't derail your life. It's the peace that comes from zero debt, total flexibility, and control over your own future. A car is a tool to move your body from point A to point B without dying or getting wet in the rain. The moment you turn that tool into a psychological crutch to signal your worth to the world, you've handed control of your financial destiny to a dealership finance manager and an insurance company. So the next time you're standing near a valet stand or sitting at a red light while a loud, expensive car pulls up beside an old faded sedan, remember what's actually happening beneath the surface. The flashy car is very often a cry for validation, funded by high-interest debt and vanishing savings. And the quiet, boring car rolling along next to it is very often driven by someone who could buy the whole dealership in cash, but chose to buy their freedom instead. The ultimate luxury isn't driving a car that turns heads. The ultimate luxury is never needing a car to say anything about you at all.